Good morning. Good morning. There we go. Nikki, I got a better response than you did. So. Welcome to Williams. Glad to have all of our members here, all of our guests. It's got a lot of rain here lately, so now we get to have a pretty cold day today. Have fun. The guest, if you would, take a look at your bulletin, and as Nikki refers to it, there's a flappy thingy right here. Be sure to fill that out. Put it in the offering plate when it comes around so we can have a record of your visit. Tonight we will have the volleyball fellowship. It starts at 6 o'clock, so everybody come out. Got teams together. If you're not on one of the teams, come out. We'll put you on a team. It's a lot of fun. You'll enjoy it a whole lot. Wednesday night we're going to have a devotion, and then the children and youth activities. That starts at 6:30. Also, Nikki wanted me to announce that the youth will be selling stock soon. You may have some youth members coming up to you now asking for you to buy stock. It's $10. Brother Mike Duncan wanted me to announce that the deadline for the Sometimers Rome trip is this Friday. So see Mike if you're still interested in going to the trip. So let's take a quick moment and everyone bow your heads and join me in reciting the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, the glory, forever and ever. Amen. There's a couple of youth that need to come up and make an announcement, so if that's you, please step up.
The blood drive is Thursday, April 2nd, 2009, from 11 to 4. Our goal is 22 units. Every 2 seconds, someone in America needs blood. All blood types are currently needed, but especially type O. O negative can be given to anyone. O positive can be given to approximately 85% of the population.
Surgical patients, car accident victims, cancer patients, and burn victims most often receive life-saving or life-sustaining blood transfusions. Nearly 5 million people receive blood transfusions each year.
There is no substitute for blood. It cannot be manufactured. It can only be given by people for people. In order to have a good donation experience, please eat and drink well before and after your donation. Eligible blood donors must be at least 17 years old or 16 years old, with parental permission, weight at 110 pounds, be in general good health, and present to donate with a valid ID or American Red Cross donor card. Please make plans to come this Thursday to give blood. Thank you.
Okay, I'm here today to remind everybody of the marriage retreat that is coming up May 1st and 2nd, which is Friday and Saturday. Deadline to sign up and pay is Sunday the 12th of April. Cost will be $40 per couple and includes the evening meal on Friday and Saturday, the location on Saturday, and the movie for Friday. Child care will be provided on Friday only. You can purchase a book for $9.76, or you can buy your own. We hope everybody comes. All right, thanks.
One thing I forgot to mention, as you can see, we have an all-men's choir, men out front, some different faces doing things up here. This Sunday is Men's Sunday, so if you're visiting, this is a little different today, so we hope you enjoy everything we have. If you would, everybody stand, take a moment, greet your neighbors.
morning. The Lent reading is from Jeremiah 31. The time is coming, declares the Lord, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah. It will not be like the covenant I made with their forefathers when I took them by the hand to lead them out of Egypt, because they broke my covenant, though I was a husband to them. This is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after that time, declares the Lord. I will put my law in their minds and write it on their hearts. I will be their God, and they will be my people. No longer will a man teach his neighbor or a man his brother, saying, know the Lord, because they will all know me, from the least of them to the greatest. For I will forgive their wickedness and will remember their sins no more.
What a beautiful thought I am thinking concerning the great speckled bird. Remember, her name is recorded on the pages of God's holy word. Teach siren to Lord her standard. They watch every move that she makes, for they long to find fault with her teaching, but really they find no mistake. Her wings shelter men from all nations, hops, herbs, every color and race. She has gathered them all in her keeping to present to the Lord face to face. When Christ comes descending from heaven on the clouds as he writes in his word, I'll be joyfully carried to meet him on the wings of the great speckled bird, on the wings of the great speckled bird.
Good morning. Oh, come on. Do better than that. Good morning.
Good morning.
That's better. Can anybody tell me what this is?
Newspaper.
The newspaper, that's right. One of my favorite things to do every morning before I go into work is to go outside, go to the mailbox, and get the newspaper and read it. And what, you look at the newspaper, and usually on the front page there's stuff about, the latest news, what's happening in the world, and what's going on in the world and here locally. Another thing I like to do is flip to the sports page, see if the Braves won, or see what Alabama did, or Auburn, or the Gamecocks. And sometimes there's a lot of negative stuff in the news that we hear about, with the war going on and the president, and just a lot of bad stuff. So sometimes I like to read the funny pages. Does anybody like to read the funny pages? You do. Does it make you smile, right? So every morning I'm depending on the newspaper lady to bring by my newspaper to where I can read the news and have a smile. And what Jesus did in the Bible, it tells us that he went from country to country talking and spreading the good news, that he was the Son of God and that he was going to die for our sins. He loved us so much that he was willing to do that. And the disciples followed Jesus, and Jesus began coming into these towns and realized that people were hurting and they were needed somebody's help. So Jesus told them to go out and pray for these people and to tell them about the good news that the heaven is a good place to be if you do what you're supposed to do. And heaven is near. So the people did that, and people started realizing that they could go to heaven one day if they did what they were supposed to do. So you think about this newspaper, and it's the person's job every day to bring us the news so that we can read and know what's going on. Now, if we go to church every day, it's our job to spread the news to other people who don't get to come to church about the good news that Jesus is God, is our Lord, and that he is our Savior, and if we follow him, that we can go to heaven one day. So I want y'all to think about that and spread the good news about Jesus, that if we do what we're supposed to, go to church and be good people, that we'll go to heaven one day, okay? All right? Y'all have a good day, all right?
If you've enjoyed what you've heard so far today, let me know, and we'll do this more often. These guys are doing a great job, and I really enjoy it. Sanctuary Choir, 4:30. 4:30 this afternoon, be cantata practice, and let me encourage you, please be here. If you're going to be a part of the cantata, please be here. Next Sunday morning, congregation, next Sunday morning, Palm Sunday, our choir will be doing our Easter cantata, Written in Red. Please let me encourage you to be here. It's a good one, and to be a blessing to you. Invite your neighbors, invite your friends and kinfolks. It'll just be a good time of worship together. Offertory hymn for the morning, 529. 529, Oh, How I Love Jesus. We'll stand and we'll sing the first, second, and the last stanza. Join us, please, as we sing.
God's children too long have been burdened. They are longing for heaven's green shore, where heartaches are left far behind us, and burdens are carried no more. Come morning, I walk by the river. I'll rest neath the evergreen tree. So I'll carry my cross through the midnight. Come morning, there's glory for me. Sometimes I'm despised and rejected, and I question, oh Father, how long? Then I'll take one more look at Mount Calvary, and it gives me the strength to go on. Come morning, I'll walk by the river. I'll rest neath the evergreen tree. So I'll carry my cross through the midnight. Come morning, there's glory for me. Come morning, there's glory for me.
Now among those who went up to worship at the festival were some Greeks. They came to Philip, who was from Bethsaida in Galilee, and said to him, Sir, we wish to see Jesus. Philip went and told Andrew. Then Andrew and Philip went and told Jesus. Jesus answered them, The hour has come for the Son of Man to be glorified. Very truly I tell you, unless a grain of wheat falls into the earth and dies, it remains a single grain. But if it dies, it bears much fruit. Those who love their life lose it, and those who hate their life in this world will keep it eternal life. Whoever serves me will follow me, and where I am, there will my servant be also. Whoever serves me, the Father will honor.
Thank you. Well, it's been a really fun day today, hasn't it? I do like this seat better than the one back there. A little bit nervous this morning. Roy volunteered the choir, it sounded like, didn't he, to sing again. But he didn't ask us. But I do agree with him. I thought the men did a great job today, and I appreciate the music that we've had provided by you three and for the different parts that people took. Matt, we know now you can do, where is Matt? We know you can do children's stories, so we got Matt McFall doing announcements. That was really good. You and Nikki can duke that out for who does the best and gets the best good mornings. But I like that. I thought that was good. Mel, I see you've got a lot of folks with you today, your family. It's good to see all y'all. We welcome you here, some of you back again to Williams. So I know you've had a good visit, and I'm glad that they've been able to come worship with you today. Also, Mr. and Mrs. Brennan Beatty are in the house. We welcome you guys. Very, very good. And I know you probably say something about this, but I still have to say it. I'm on behalf of Steve and Miriam, their grandson made the Alabama football team as a kicker. So we're really proud of him. Really proud of that. Now, as far as the Roll Tide stuff goes for them, if that comes out and they wear crimson and white, it's because they love their grandson. It's because they love their grandson. And I like that. I think that's good. So we're very proud of Parker and hope he can get the ball in the end zone every kick, as Steve's been telling me he's doing. Very proud of him. Well, I read a cartoon recently that had a church where the deacons would go in and meet with the pastor before church and have prayer with the pastor before the services. And one day, a little boy was standing outside the office, and he saw all the deacons coming out of the pastor's office, and he said, the little quote the little boy said was, "Did all of you guys get in trouble at the same time?" He had to go to the office. And I thought maybe some of the men might have thought that when I was saying, we're going to have men's day, and we started calling and asking you, would you do certain things and be a part of church? But I think that, you know, we get it right at Williams, in my opinion. We get it right, and then that we see that men and women are equal in their responsibility to serve God, in their sense of calling from God, and in the opportunities that God gives them through our church and in the world. So we see that as an equal thing. The foot of the cross is level, and men and women, boys and girls are equally able and are equally willing, I think, to be called and to be used. But today we did want to highlight the service of men, and I think that it's important to note that we have a very high level of involvement of men in the life of this church, and that's a very good thing. Some churches can't say that. In fact, the old saying has always been, if the ladies left the church, it would fall apart. We're blessed to have a variety of people at our church involved, from youth to older, and men and women. And I just shudder to imagine what it would be like if the men were not in the participation levels that they're in, if they weren't helping with the building and the ministry of our church. So I wanted this day to be, as much as anything else, a way for your church to say to you men, thank you. Thank you for standing up for Jesus. Thank you for being a part of this church. Thank you for your willingness to be a Christian and to live out your faith among us, not only in the congregation and our ministries and things we do, but just in your families and in your life. Thank you very much. We appreciate you. You mean a lot to us, and you mean a lot to the work of the kingdom. And without you, our church would not be the strong church that I believe it is. So I want you to know that and hear that today. I've been going through some sermons of mine from the past and trying to do some organizing with them. I found the first sermon that I ever preached, scribbled on some little pieces of paper, and I found the sermon that I preached for my trial sermon at my church at Kentucky. I had preached it twice. I preached it once in the same month in a church in Indiana, and then at the church in Kentucky. And I told Mary the other day, I said, you know, what would it have been like if we had gone to Indiana instead of Kentucky, which we thought was a great church for us. I found many of the sermons that I preached for you all when I've baptized you. There were several of you that I baptized, and I found that, and it was pretty neat to see the things that were said then. I also found a sermon that was one of the most controversial sermons that I ever preached in Tennessee, and it was called The Fanatics of Jericho. And in that story, it's the story of the people coming in to conquer the promised land that they believed God had given them. And they came to Jericho, and many of us know that story of the walls falling down. They marched around it, and the trumpets blew, and then they believed that God, you know, had the walls to fall down, and they were able to easily go in and occupy that town. But in the Bible story, it tells us that they also went about and destroyed every life in there. They killed everybody, boys and girls, babies, even the animals. They slaughtered everything. And I talked about in that sermon how I thought they probably misunderstood God on that part of the conquering of the nation. I don't believe God tells us to go, you know, slaughter the babies, for example. And I remember after that sermon that one of the deacons at that church was visiting with me, and he said, you know, about that sermon, if those guys had gone ahead and just wiped out all the Arabs and just killed them all, like God wanted them to do, we wouldn't have the trouble we have today in the world. Well, we can debate whatever you think about that, but that is, to me, an idea of right-handed power. It's the idea that we exercise whatever strength and power we have to force our way through something, to push our way through something, to destroy or to fix or to do whatever it is, but it's the power and might of force and strength. And it is quite opposite the way Jesus chose to operate in the world. He chose what I'm calling today the left-handed power. And so what I want to say to us today, to men in particular, but to all of us, is to consider that one of the things Jesus asked us to do is to not trust so much in that right-handed power that a lot of times men are told and educated to use in the world, the force of your might and your strength. I think it takes a lot of courage to take up your life and to control your life and to make something of yourself. But I believe that it takes more courage to lay down your life, to take hold of the life that God would give you. Now, in the life that God would give you, when you let go of your own power and your own will and your own control and allow God to take charge of your life, there's still glory. And it's a different kind of glory. And the Bible tells us it's a glory that lasts, not like the glory that we get when we try to create our own lives and out of our own power and our own strength do what we think is the best and right thing to do in the world. The passage for us today says that there were some folks who came, they were Greeks, and they had heard about Jesus and they wanted to see Him. They wanted to meet Jesus. So they came up to two of His disciples, two brothers, and they said, we would see Jesus. And I want you to know that we still have people asking that question today. People today still would see Jesus. They would like to see, to touch, and to experience Jesus in this world. They'd like to know that Jesus is real, that Jesus really has an effect and changes people's lives. I believe that primarily happens today through people like us, through His followers, through Christians who've accepted Him and allow Him to live through us. It's hard for that to happen if you maintain control, if you use your own power and your own strength and your own designs instead of turning your life over to Him and allow Him to live through you. People would see Jesus. And men and women, I think people would see Jesus best in the folks who have decided to let go of their own willpower and their own control and trust Jesus enough to turn your life over to Jesus, to turn your life over to Christ and to live in the ways that He did, and trust a power and a way of life that is very different from what we think we need to do in order to succeed and to make sure everything goes the way we think it should go. Now, our story is sort of odd. These folks come and say, we would see Jesus. And the response of Jesus to that question, when it gets to Him, indicates that Jesus is going to go about doing stuff very different from the way you and I would do it if we were in charge. His response has to do with, the only way for a plant to really grow and to produce is for that first grain to fall to the earth, to die, and to be buried, and then something creative and new and much better than the old thing can exist. And then he goes further. He talks about, I'm troubled about this because it's not going to be easy to lay down your life. It takes more courage to lay down your life and turn it over to God than it does to keep your life and try to maintain control. And Jesus says, I'm troubled by this, but basically like He does at the garden, not my will, but the will of the Father is the most important thing. He gets a sort of a confirmation from God there. Some thought it was thunder, some thought it was some strange voice that says basically to Jesus, you will be glorified. It'll be a different kind of glory, but you will be glorified. And then at the very end, the comment from the Gospel of John is Jesus, what He was doing in response to the question we would see Jesus, is indicating the kind of death that He would die. Now, I want you to think about that. It's a little hard to grab a hold of, but when somebody says, I want to see Jesus today, what we often do is to go to our right hand and say, look how big the church is. Look how much money we raised. Look how many missionaries we have. Look how many folks we've baptized. Look how great and strong a force for good we are in the world. When somebody went to Jesus and said, we would see the Christ, He indicates the kind of sacrifice, the kind of submission to God's will. He indicates the kind of death that He would die. That's a little strange, isn't it? It's a little different. It's a cross life that Jesus lives. Not just at Calvary on Good Friday, but His whole life is left-handed, using a different kind of power than the people expected and wanted Him to use. I just wrote down some of the things that He did that I thought indicate this kind of power. And see if you recognize it. Jesus took time to listen to people. He didn't sit down with you and tell you what you need to do with your life, even though I believe Jesus, God, knows better about your life than you do. But Jesus sat and listened to people. Do you want to be made well? What is your request of me? And He sat and had supper with folks. He took time. He lingered among them. He didn't try to force His agenda. I'll knock at the door, but I won't kick it down. When Jesus dealt with people, He touched them. He didn't shy away from folks who had diseases like leprosy. If somebody was blind and they had a hard time believing that He could make them see again, He touched their eyes. It was very important that when someone was in need, they felt that the hand, the human touch, the time, this is God who had plenty of things to do, who took the time not only to listen to us, but to touch us physically and spiritually in our lives. He served people. He served people. The Son of Man has not come to be served, but to serve. Remember at the Last Supper, when they're having that great last meal, and this is His last shot to be a teacher for His disciples. One of the greatest teachings He gives them is that He got up from the table, He put a towel around Him, He got on His knees, and He began to wash the feet of His disciples. Jesus was a kind of person who was moved by compassion. When He saw people and the things that they experienced, He was able to look at them and feel a compassion for them. And a compassion that Jesus felt was a compassion that found a way to help them through their troubles, to help them know that somebody was with them in their troubles, to help them to see that they were not alone in this world. I hope you recognize that in Jesus. Jesus took a stand about things that He believed deeply. When they were going to stone a woman to death for her sins, He stopped everybody and stood between the rock throwers and the woman. He was always taking the side of somebody who was in need and thought we might could redeem this situation before we rush in judgment. And He shared a lot of good news. Now listen, there's a lot of things we could say about Jesus. He didn't use a lot of right-handed power, y'all. He went about it in a different way, and I've indicated some things that all of us can do as followers of Jesus. One of the things about John is when John presents us with the cross, the crucifixion, he gives us sort of a different theory about the atonement. There's a lot of theories about what all was happening on the cross. The most famous for a lot of us is the substitutionary theory, which is He got on the cross instead of me. He was a substitute for me. John takes a different view on the cross. What John says about the cross is that when Jesus is on the cross, He is judging the world. The way of the world is wrong. And when He dies on the cross, what He's doing is using left-handed power to drive out the power of the ruler of this world. And by that, He will draw all people to Himself. It's a sort of a different way of thinking about the cross, and that's the way John presents that for us. So I simply want to say this. Well, how does this left-handed power work in our lives today? If we would like to be like Jesus, if we would truly want to be so that somebody could say we would see Jesus and we could allow Jesus to live through us, how would that work in our lives? And I want to tell you just 4 basic things that will be fairly easy, hopefully, to remember. And the first is try to please God. Live your life in such a way that you please God. One of my favorite movies is the movie called Chariots of Fire. It's about the 1914 Olympics. And they have these runners, and one of the runners is a missionary from China who lives in Scotland named Eric Liddell. It's a true story. And I remember in one of the scenes they're talking about him as a missionary, and he's a great runner, and in fact I don't think he ever loses. He's finally killed in China later on, before the times of the war. But he's getting ready to run, and one of the guys says what people need today is a muscular Christianity. They need to see an athlete, a person who has power and strength and abilities and is a winner, and they need to see that person live their life in such a way as to proclaim God, to say that as powerful as I am, I still submit and worship God. And later in the story, somebody says to him, how do you run with such power and strength? How are you always such a good winner and all that? And he says, I don't run for people. I run for the pleasure of God. I believe God gave me these gifts and these abilities, and I run to please Him. And I want to say that left-handed power says to us, differently than right-handed, left-handed power says, I'm not doing this for my glory. I'd like to live my life in such a way that whatever I do, however I treat people, whatever I work at, where I play, how I conduct myself, I do it in such a way as to please God. There were some old missionaries in Zimbabwe one time who'd been there for a long, long time, and they had attended a wedding, and the Zimbabwe pastor had gotten up, and in that wedding, he was calling on different things, and he asked these two missionaries to stand up in the congregation, and he said, and they thought, we're going to be honored, and they're going to really think, we've served you all this time, and he said, you know what, if these old men can follow Jesus, anybody can. Anybody can. I think that's a good way to think about it. When I ask you to please God with your life, that's something anybody can do. Anybody can do. But it is so important that we consciously think about those things. If not, you will find yourself reverting to right-handed power. You will find yourselves working to please somebody else, to please your friends, to please your family, to please your preacher, to please yourself. And that's no way to live if you're a follower of Jesus. And I'm simply asking you to think about, what are you doing with your life right now, and is Jesus pleased with it? Do you live your life in such a way as to please God? The second thing is this. Years and years ago, when the Roman Empire was about to fall, a guy named Augustine was writing, and he was a Christian. He was trying to live during that time, and he said that the barbarians from the north were at the gates of Rome. The city, the eternal city of Rome, was ready to fall, and he knew it. And he said part of the problem was the moral decline of his society. It's very similar to situations we might feel we face here today. And we worry about our society. We worry about the morality. We worry about the bad things that are happening. But he said that even in the midst of the moral decline, in the midst of the barbarians at the gate, when people were uncertain about the security of their future, there were still people who walked the city of God now. There were still people who walked the city of God in our presence, in the present, in the time that we live now. And I want to ask you, can you be one of those people who walks the city of God now, whose decision to say, I know it's bad, I know it's troubling, I know there's a lot of insecurity out there, but I choose to live in such a way that the goodness and the righteousness of God is in me, and I will be the good I wish to see in the world today. I will walk now the best I can and with all humility in the city of God. Augustine's belief was that the people who could do that would be preservers of his society. Men like to preserve and protect. I do. I want to do everything I can to preserve and protect and to take care of what's in my charge. And men, I want to tell you that one of the best things that you can do for the kingdom of God is to walk the city of God now. Let your presence and your actions and your thoughts and your attitudes and the things that you do or say be such not only to please God, but to be part of the salt and light that Jesus asked us to be, to preserve the good that exists here and now that God has created in this world. Walk the city of God now. I believe that in the midst of all the stuff that we face in our times and the worries that we have and the uncertainties that we have, that there are men and there are women who have chosen, despite the circumstances, to walk the city of God, and they are the remnant of God's people. They are the preserving element of Christianity that will never die. The gates of hell will not prevail against it. They are the people who will preserve the best of Christ, and it will go forward no matter what. Nothing can quench it. And you and I get an opportunity to be those kinds of people every day. You can choose to walk in the gloom of the streets of this world and this city, or you can choose to hold your head high with heart full of God and God's love, with trust and belief deep in your soul, and walk the city of God so that what you say, what you do matters eternally, and you are the preserving salt and light that Jesus pleaded and begged and commanded us to be in this world. And I want you to learn a word. Third thing, I want you to learn a word. It's a Greek word named agape. Agape. It's called love. It's called love. Now, it's a very rare word in Greek. In fact, before the New Testament was written, the most common word used for love was eros. So we get the word erotic. But people back then, including Aristotle, used eros and said eros is the kind of love people have when they are thinking about God, the divine, the gods, whatever it was. And eros is a love that says, I lack something, but the beloved, the one I love, has something that completes me. And I think that's a good way to think about it. That's the kind of love sometimes we think about with our spouses. Sometimes we even think about that with God. I lack something, but my love has an object, and that object of my love has something in that person, that being, that completes me, that brings me fulfillment in life. But when the New Testament writers started talking about love, they did away with that word, and they brought in a new word called agape. Agape is a word that nobody knows where it really comes from. It means something like to be satisfied with who you are. So that you don't really need to love some other object to give you completeness. You just sort of feel fulfilled in the way you are. And this was the kind of love that described over and over again in the Bible Jesus. He loved us, but didn't feel that He lacked something and needed to express His love for us. His love flowed out of a fullness that was already there in Jesus. So there are some examples. Jesus says, perhaps somebody would have enough eros love for somebody, for a friend, for example, that they might even lay down their life and die for that friend. But Jesus said He had come to die for people who were still sinners. They weren't the friends of God because they had disobeyed God and been opposite to God. When Jesus came, all these religious folks said, you need to treat us good because we're religious. We're being your friends. And Jesus said, I came out of agape love to reach out to folks who thought they were the enemies of God. I've come to call sinners and people who are opposite in their living from the way God wanted us to live. Sort of odd, isn't it? And even at the cross, He loves, out of this agape love, even the people who are hammering nails in His hands, who are mocking Him as a guy's dying and breathing his last on the cross. I'm not telling you you can do that. In fact, I don't think any of us can muster up that kind of love where it's out of our own love and our own fullness and our own completeness that we can love others. I don't think you can do it, and yet you must do it. And the only way it can happen is if you are abiding and been experiencing the agape love of Jesus for you, so much so that that becomes an overflow into other people's lives. You don't love people for what they can do for you. You just love them because God has first loved you. Learn a new word, agape. Be people who love and are moved as Jesus was to do those things He did, listening, touching, having compassion, really caring, making a difference. Not because you need to do that to get blessed. Do it because you have been blessed. You have experienced an overwhelming kind of love called agape love, and it cannot stop with you because you've experienced that great love of God. You want it to continue on and have other folks experience that. And the fourth thing is this. I love stories about Mount Everest, and I somewhere in my mind think that I'd like to do that someday, although I know a lot of folks die in the attempt. And I don't like cold a lot, so probably won't do it. There's the second highest mountain in the world, has a strange name. Does anybody know it? K2. K2. It's not very romantic, but K2. K2 apparently is much more difficult to climb. And last August, in a time frame of 30 hours, 11 people died. In fact, the death rate of going to K2 is about 100 times higher than the death rate of folks going up Mount Everest. And I was reading the story about the accounts of all the deaths and the situation of the trauma that happened on K2 last August. And there was one little thing that caught my eye. It was a guy who was from from Nepal. And there was another folk, they call them Sherpas, who help. They're acclimated to the breathing in that area of the world, and they often carry and help out with the people who go up these mountains. They have to have equipment in order to climb the mountains and come back down. And one of the things they must have is an ice axe. Because when you slip, that's the one thing that might save you. And one of the Sherpas had lost his ice axe in the darkness of that time at 20-something thousand feet above sea level, and it was so cold. And another guy decided to tether this man to him. They tethered themselves, they tied themselves literally together with one ice axe between them. And the likelihood of that is very slim that you'll make it. But the statement he made to this guy was, if we fall together. If we die together. But we will go down together. Now, the statements of people, and it was very interesting to read in secular press about this story. And they made it. They survived. And people talked about this was such a selfless act. It's unusual. It's one of the unique things that occurs in the world. And I want to say to you that that ought not be so. Some of the folks who died on that trip, the story is that they were going so slow and they were in such need that people would bypass them to get on down the mountain themselves. One guy even saw a man that he just passed fly by him. He fell, and he saw him go right by. And I want to say to you that it ought not be so. It is so that selfless sacrifice, the giving, that compassion is the unusual. It ought not be so. That those kinds of things are the exceptions to the rule. And I want you to hear that Jesus tells us that in His kingdom, that the way of His power, of sacrifice, that is the norm. That's what's expected of us. We are expected to tether ourselves to someone else's life. If we die together. If we fall together. But we will tether our lives to someone else. I would rather us develop a theology of the cross rather than a theology of glory. Now, I'm not telling you to run away from the victory of Easter, but I'm really saying to you, don't run away from the Good Friday Calvary of Jesus. Don't run away from the loss, the giving, the self-sacrifice, the lamb going to the slaughter. Don't run away from Jesus. Don't run away from Jesus. Don't run away from the Jesus who gave His all for us, not only as an example, but to tether us to Him so that if He falls, we fall. If He dies, we die. But we will go together in this world. I want to ask you to consider that Jesus did not sidestep, bypass the fears of people. He didn't go around our troubles. He didn't get away from the things that make us worried and scare us in this world. He went and engaged them and tethered Himself to them. And on the cross, all that was gathered up in Him. All that. And on the cross, He judged the world and said, the way it is run is not right. It should not be like this. It should be like this. It will be the way of the cross. It will be the way of the cross now and forever. Somebody says that in the way Christianity is operating today, that membership is not going to be near as important as participation. It won't matter a whole lot in the end if your name's on the roll of a church, if you were Baptist, Catholic, Methodist, it won't matter a whole lot. It won't matter if your name was on a committee. What will matter is, did you participate? Were you there when needed? When you experienced the call, did you respond? When the opportunity to stop and show compassion came your way, did you stoop down? When the least of these were encountered by you, did you take off your coat? Did you give them a sip of water? Did you make a difference? You know, there's two Simons at the end of Jesus' story. Simon Peter, and Simon the Cyrene. Now, Simon Peter eventually comes around, but for a while he runs away from the cross, doesn't he? He denies Jesus 3 times. Simon the Cyrene is pressed into service and helps Jesus carry the cross all the way to the end. Now, we're not told that Simon Cyrene was a disciple of Jesus, but when it comes down to it, participation in the cross life of Jesus is all that really matters. It won't matter about your membership on a roll. What will matter is when you saw me naked, lonely, starving, and in need, when you saw me, did you help out? Did you make a difference? Did you use the power of Jesus to do it? Because it matters how we operate in this world. Who are the people of God today? Well, I believe they are the people who do the will of God. May it be said of us, men and women, that we will be the people of God. God help us. We will be the people of God. We will try our best to do the will of God in this world. Amen? Amen. We have a moment of invitation. Invite you as we stand to respond in any way the Lord has touched your heart today in this service, in the time before this, as God always is with us and working with us. We invite you to come forward if you need to share a prayer request, to make a decision public that you would like to maybe accept Christ as your Savior, or join this church, or make a commitment to some kind of service for God. Whatever it is, I invite you to come forward as God leads you this morning. Let us stand as we sing. 371. Thank you for being here today. It's a really fun day for me, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you, men, for all the ways you participated today and the way you continue to help our church. I want to remind you, next Sunday is Palm Sunday. We'll begin Holy Week and thinking about the last week of Jesus' life here. And we will have a wonderful presentation of the message of Easter on next Sunday's service with the choir. Roy talked about the Easter cantata. And you know, I got to thinking, if you're new to church, you don't know really what a cantata is. If you're new to singing, because I probably wouldn't know. Well, it's a whole lot of singing about Jesus and Easter and the leading to the cross and His rising again. And it's been prepared by people who love to sing and who want to share the message through music. And I'm looking forward to it next week. And you know, I thought today, Roy's really a good choir leader, isn't he? Because I could sing in the choir today. He's good. He can get that organized. He's good. Thank y'all for being here. I've asked Oliver Graves to close us in a benediction. So, Brother Oliver, if you wouldn't mind, lead us in prayer. Thank you.
attention a minute. Let's give old Pascal Hamby a birthday hand clap today. He'll be going back to the home this afternoon, so we need to take care of him.